Hi everybody, welcome to the dungeon. My name is Robin and today is Flameworking 102.31. Today I'm going to be playing around with the Double Helix color Triton, which is described as a high potency silver color on top of a cobalt blue base. And when you combine certain other colors with the Triton, you can get some really great special effects. So that's what we're going to play around with today. And if you don't have the Triton color, I have done my best to put a whole bunch of different elements into this bead. So if you want to follow it along with other colors, you'll still have a beautiful outcome. So with that said, let's get right into it. As always, I hope you're all doing safe and well out there. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time in the dungeon. All right, I'm going to start this out with a bit of black, and I'm going to use this as my base color, and it just looks really pretty underneath the Triton. It is like a really deep dark blue. So I'm going to start out by heating it up, and I am using a thick kind of a 7 to 8 millimeter rod here. And I'm going to go ahead and wind it up on my mandrel, making sure my mandrel is nice and hot where the glass is touching the mandrel. And I am overlapping kind of in the heat, and that helps me to avoid getting bubbles in the glass. About an inch worth, maybe a little bit more than an inch. I want this to be a nice big focal bead. Okay, so I'm going to add another layer of the black here, just to thicken it up a little bit. And then I'll just spend a few seconds heating and melting everything in, and just getting my shape started, getting a nice smooth shape. And then I'll let it cool down a little bit. And now I'm going to add another color that looks very different underneath the Triton. This is the Opal Yellow by Effetre, and I'm going to add it just by heating it up and dotting it back and forth outside of the flame a little bit there, and just get a really nice abstract pattern. It doesn't matter what happens under here, I want everything to be a little different. So you'll see this afterwards. You'll see the dark blue areas and the very lighter blue areas. And the light blue is what is on top of this opal yellow. And this yellow is also a kind of a striking color. When you heat it up and cool it down, it's kind of a very white, very creamy white color. So after I heat it up, I'm just going to shape it a little bit and let it cool down. And then I'll take it in kind of in the back of the flame, mid to the back of the flame, and start to warm it up a little bit, and the color will start to strike in the heat, and it'll develop into that yellow color again like you see right here. All right, so on top of that, and I love the way that looks actually. I was almost kind of sad that I had to cover it up, but I'm going to cover it up with the Triton. So when I am encasing a color, I always like to make sure I'm working on the bead is underneath is cool, but it's not cold. Anyway, I am just getting the glass nice and hot and swiping from the top to the bottom and overlapping as I go. And then I'll add a little to the bottom and a little to the top where I need it. And then I'll go ahead and start reheating everything up a little bit and just start focusing on one side of the bead and making sure that everything looks nice. And then I'll worry about the other side later on. I always like to focus on one side, but it depends on what I'm doing too. But here, one side, I'll get things shaped up. And then I'll go ahead and start bringing my heat towards the opposite end here and melting all that down, and then shaping it up for the next step. I'm just kind of gliding this on my graphite pad. No pressure at all. All right, so I have some frit that I rarely use frit, but I got some of this dark ivory frit. And if you get too much, you can use a little knife and scrape it off. And I only want to use a little tiny amount. This dark ivory, I noticed, has a really heavy reaction with the Triton. And it's interesting, it gets dark in the center and it gets really big and white and kind of creamy on the outside. So it puffs up real big. And because it puffs up real big, I only want a very tiny amount. So a little goes a long ways. But you can have a lot of fun with this dark ivory and the Triton. Okay, and something else that doesn't necessarily react with it unless you get it screaming hot is this little thin trail that I'm going to add of the this black, and I'm just going to heat it up and I apply it, pull away a little bit, and you're trailing it outside of the flame. That's the important thing. I'm going to do it again with clear. Oh, that was the intense black. So, but what I also have discovered is that the clear will also have an effect with the Triton as well. So I'm going to add a trail of my clear, again by heating and applying it and just spinning it outside of the flame. I'm going to add a little bit more to the other side here, just a little bit. But yes, the clear will kind of turn white on top of the blue. It's really interesting. I hope that you see and notice all of these little things in the end, because we're going to start moving this glass around quite a bit. It's going to be a really cool abstract design. So I'm just going to heat all of that in and let that cool down just a little bit. Now, this whole step that I'm about to do here, I don't know if it really, you couldn't really even see it. So you can just, if you're trying to copy this bead, that's great. You don't have to do this step. I just didn't notice that it did anything, but I thought it was really cool to play around with my razor blade tool and add a couple of kind of gill-like looking areas. I think if I had pressed these in a little bit deeper, maybe it would have been more interesting, or maybe if I had flattened the bead. Either way, I'm adding some little lines in here on opposite sides, and then we'll go ahead and let that cool down for just a second. Now I'm going to add clear on top, but before I do that, I want to go ahead and reduce this color. And so I'm going to turn down my oxygen a little bit until I get that yellow flame coming up a bit out of my torch. And then I'll go ahead and just turn my glass at the front, or the far end of the flame, and you see that it is kind of shiny there, kind of oil slick like, but it looks different depending on if it's on black or if it's on the yellow. And the clear on top really kind of makes all of these it's hard to explain, but the clear on top makes the blue kind of come out. Anyway, so I thought because I had put those lines in with the razor blade, it would be better for me to add the glass in a wrap like this instead of swiping it on. If I hadn't have added those, I would have definitely been swiping the glass on, because I prefer that method better. Either way, you're going to add clear glass on the whole thing. And, because I added it in a spiral, it wasn't perfect. And, when you're making an abstract bead, I don't really consider, that I'm not doing it perfectly, because what is perfect when you're talking about abstract, right? So I'm just really doing my best to get as much clear on here as I can. And now I'm just going to add a little bit where I think I need it to be. All right, I'm going to work my edges in a little bit and just start to smooth everything out. It takes me quite a while to heat and smooth. It's important for me to get the edges done first and then work my way into the center. So heating up a bead like this, like just this one section, could take maybe, 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the type of torch you have and the type of clear you have. All right, that looks great. But now let's push it a little bit more. I want some more interesting things happening here. So I thought it'd be fun to do a plunge and twist all around. And I am using a factory-made stringer here of clear. So it's kind of like 1/8 of an inch thick. And I'm going to heat everything up in a nice big area, because what I'm doing essentially is going through the clear and through and into that layer of Triton. And what I have left behind is the color underneath. So it might be black. You might see it to be a little brighter like the yellow, but it almost creates a window into that very first color layer. And I also like the depth that it gives it. So when I'm plunging and twisting, I am pushing a cold rod into hot glass, doing a nice twist. I'm not, and I'm trying to do each twist pretty much the same. I'm not too particular on that. But if you have a hard time getting the stringer to come off, just let that glass cool down a little bit. It's just because it's too hot. You can even blow on it a little bit and then kind of break it off. All right, now that I have all of those little swirls in the glass, I'm going to go ahead and just start to gently melt it all down again. I do love the way that the twists look without melting it down, though. It does look nice and gives it a really beautiful texture. But I wanted to give this a little bit more depth overall, so you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a whole nother layer of clear on there. But before I do that, I want to make sure that this looks nice and rounded and my edges look good. I want this to be almost completely finished. And you can kind of see some of that reduction through the clear. Unfortunately, the camera just did not pick it up very well, but I hope you appreciate the final shots here, or at the very end. All right, so for my final layer of clear here, I'm just worried about the center band of this bead. I don't feel like I need to go from one edge all the way to the other. So I'm just kind of swiping over the center as I go. I also like to use the Super Clear by Effetre. And I know that some clears may not affect the Triton, but this is the Super Clear by Effetre that gives that kind of a white line on top of the Triton. Okay, so now my final reheat here, and I'm just making sure that everything is nice and hot. And again, a reheat like this can take, and because this is my final reheat, probably a good 5 minutes on this part. I think this whole bead took me about 45 minutes to do. All right, and before I put it away, I want to make sure that my edges are nice and smooth and they both kind of match. So I'm going to heat each side up and work it in and smooth it down with my butter knife. And as soon as I like the way things look, I'll just kind of move to the other side and melt that down and shape that as well. And, I know that not everybody may have this Triton color. So you can still make a beautiful bead by using a different color. Instead of the Triton, you can substitute maybe a blue. You may not get the same kind of effects, but it's always fun to experiment and, see what fun things you can come up with. I was really surprised with the way that the dark ivory came out on top of this as well. So hopefully you can take some things from this demonstration and make it your own. All right, you guys, I hope you all enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think, and I hope to see you soon in the dungeon.